My knuckles were barely an inch from the heavy oak front door when it ripped open from the inside. A hand shot out, clamped onto my forearm, and yanked me across the threshold. I stumbled onto the hardwood, my boots skidding against the polished floor. My grandfather stood there in the dim light of the foyer. His face was completely drained of color. His skin pulled tight over his cheekbones. His eyes, though, were incredibly sharp and piercing, like he had been standing behind that solid oak door for hours, waiting for exactly this moment. Before I could catch my breath, he shoved me toward the kitchen. "Get inside quickly," Hay has said. His voice barely a raspy breath. "Hide right now." I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong. The loud crunch of gravel outside cut me off immediately. My mother's tires had just rolled into the circular driveway. He shoved me again. Harder this time, pushing me right into the narrow, dark gap behind the tall kitchen pantry. Dust coated my throat. I pressed my spine against the cold plaster, squeezed my eyes shut, and held my breath as the front door swung wide open. Footsteps echoed heavily through the foyer. 3 distinct sets. My mother, Whitney, always walked like she owned the floorboards, her steps heavy with absolute entitlement. Next came the dragging, lazy shuffle of my stepfather. Cole, the third set, was sharp and quick. High heels clicking with practice. Corporate authority. "Dad, we are just checking in." My mother called out. Her voice dripped with that sickeningly sweet tone she reserved strictly for country club luncheons and people she was about to manipulate. I peeked through the tiny hinge crack between the cabinet and the wall. My grandfather had retreated to his worn leather armchair. He slumped down, his chin resting weakly on his chest, staring vacantly at the patterned rug. The sharp, urgent man who had just thrown me into the pantry was entirely gone. In his place sat a frail, confused 80-year-old man. The woman in the high heels stepped forward into my line of sight. She dropped a thick leather folder onto the coffee table. "We have the paperwork ready. Walter, just a few signatures. And your daughter can take over all these stressful financial burdens for you." My grandfather blinked slowly. He looked up at the ceiling fan like it was a fascinating puzzle. "Is it time for dinner?" he mumbled, his words slurring perfectly. My mother sighed, a harsh, jagged sound echoing in the quiet room. The sweet facade vanished instantly. She turned to Cole, her face twisting into a mask of pure irritation. "He will not remember by Christmas anyway. We just need him to hold the pen and make a mark." Cole rubbed his jaw, looking around the living room like he was already pricing the antique furniture and original paintings. "Just guide his hand." Cole muttered, "The notary is right here." "Paige, you can witness it." Right, the woman named Paige clicked her pen, tapping it against the leather folder. "As long as he makes a mark on the paper in my presence, my stamp makes it perfectly legal." My grandfather fumbled with the pen she handed him. Dropping it onto the rug, he apologized in a weak, shaky voice, asking about his tomato garden. For 20 grueling minutes, he played the perfect victim. He asked the same question 4 times. He called Cole by the name of the mailman. My mother grew furious, finally snatching the pen away and snapping that they would do this in front of everyone at his birthday party this weekend, where he would be too embarrassed to act out. They stormed out, the front door slamming shut behind them. I waited until their engine faded completely down the street. I stepped out of the pantry, my hands shaking with an intense, blinding rage. My grandfather stood up from his armchair. He did not need a cane. He rolled his shoulders back, walked confidently into the kitchen, and poured himself a tall glass of ice water. His eyes met mine, clear and completely present. "They are trying to take the house," he said, his voice steady and strong, "and they have already taken $45,000 from the secondary accounts." He had suspected it for months. Whitney had convinced him to add her as a convenience signer in case of sudden medical emergencies. Instead, she had been structuring small withdrawals, always keeping them strictly under $10,000 to avoid triggering bank red flags and federal reporting algorithms. She was funneling the cash to cover Cole's collapsing real estate debts. Garrett knew if he accused them without absolute proof, Whitney would use her formidable social standing to paint him as a paranoid old man losing his mind. So he gave her exactly what she wanted. He played the fool to force her to bring the final paperwork directly into his home. I stared at him, feeling 34 years of conditioning shatter in a single instant. My entire life, I had been the designated family peacekeeper. I swallowed my anger, apologized when I was not wrong, and shrank myself just to avoid my mother's terrifying emotional wrath. But looking at the cold, brilliant calculation in my grandfather's eyes, I knew the peace was dead. It was time for war. I am a high school guidance counselor. Every single day, I deal with toxic bullies, manipulative parents, and systemic emotional abuse. I know exactly how to document a crisis. I know how to build an airtight paper trail that no amount of fake tears or loud shouting can erase. We did not waste time screaming into the void. We went tactical. First, we drove straight to a trusted geriatric specialist across town. For 2 hours, the doctor put Garrett through a grueling, comprehensive cognitive evaluation. The result was a time-stamped, signed medical document declaring Walter Garrett Walsh in the 99th percentile for cognitive function. He was sharper and more capable than people half his age, but we still needed the financial receipts. I asked him how we were supposed to get the bank statements if Whitney was aggressively monitoring his incoming mail. Garrett reached into his right shoe and pulled out a small, worn brass key. He explained that the very moment he noticed the first missing funds, he quietly redirected all his sensitive financial mail to a private post office box on the industrial edge of Charlotte. I drove there alone. The post office was empty, humming with harsh fluorescent light. I looked over my shoulder twice before sliding the brass key into the metal slot. Inside sat a thick, heavy stack of sealed bank statements. I sat in my car in the parking lot and ripped them open. The paper trail was undeniable. $3,000 here, $8,000 there, all funneled directly into Cole's failing business accounts. Sitting in that parking lot, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, a vivid memory hit me. I was 12 years old, crying intensely in my childhood bedroom because my mother had given away my favorite winter coat to a neighbor just to look charitable. When I confronted her, she told me I was selfish, crazy, and completely making things up. She gaslit me relentlessly until I broke down and apologized to her for being ungrateful. I had spent decades keeping the peace. But looking at these printed bank statements, I finally understood the brutal truth. Keeping the peace in a toxic family does not create peace. It merely subsidizes the abuser's war. Every single time I stayed quiet, I was actively funding her next emotional attack. I was breaking my own trauma bond right there in the driver's seat. Today, I was the one holding the hammer. The stakes were escalating faster than either of us anticipated. Cole was in incredibly deep trouble. He owed a massive balloon payment to aggressive private lenders by the end of the month. His commercial real estate flip had turned into a total money pit, and dangerous loan sharks were circling his business. Whitney was absolutely terrified of losing her wealthy Charlotte lifestyle. She could not stomach the idea of facing her elite country club friends as a bankrupt failure. Through a mutual connection in the county clerk's office, I learned something chilling. Paige, the commission-hungry notary, had unlawfully pre-stamped a blank quitclaim deed as a special favor to Whitney. It was their ultimate backup plan. If the public power of attorney signing at the birthday party failed, Whitney was planning to forge Garrett's signature on the deed in the dead of night and transfer the $850,000 estate directly into her own name. She thought she held all the cards. She even called me that Tuesday, her voice dripping with fake maternal concern, telling me how incredibly sad it was to watch Grandpa slip away. She tried to make me feel completely isolated, hinting strongly that the whole extended family agreed with her plan to take control. It was a masterful attempt at a false defeat, designed specifically to make me surrender before the fight even started. I let her talk. I let her think she was winning. As soon as I hung up the phone, Garrett and I walked into the offices of the most ruthless estate attorney in Mecklenburg County. We bypassed the slow, tedious bureaucracy of adult protective services entirely. Instead, Garrett executed a formal deed of trust. He legally transferred the entire estate into an irrevocable trust, naming me as the sole trustee and explicitly stripping Whitney of any legal right to the property. The trapdoor was armed, locked, and legally binding. We did not just build a shield. We built a snare. We were just waiting for her to step directly on it. The 80 gold balloons bumped softly against the high ceiling of Garrett's living room. The catered tables groaned under the weight of expensive hors d'oeuvres and crystal glasses. Whitney had orchestrated a sheer masterpiece of manipulation. She invited 30 of her wealthiest country club friends, the local pastor, and every gossiping neighbor in the city of Charlotte. She wanted witnesses. She wanted a captive audience to watch the tragic, loving daughter take on the heavy burden of her poor, mindless father. She tapped her wine glass with a silver fork. The room went completely silent. Whitney stood in the center of the room, squeezing a single, perfect tear from her eye. She delivered a sickeningly sweet speech about the tragedy of aging. She talked about how it broke her heart to step in, but someone had to protect him from himself. She gestured grandly, and Paige stepped forward, pulling the legal documents from her leather folder. "We are doing this out in the open," Whitney announced, her voice trembling with manufactured grief. "Because this family has absolutely no secrets." I stepped squarely into the center of the living room. "You are absolutely right." "Mom," I said, my voice echoing off the hardwood floor. "No secrets." Whitney's smile froze completely. Her eyes went flat, dark, and hard. She leaned in, dropping her voice to that private, cutting register that used to terrify me. "You are embarrassing the family. Sit down right now." I pulled the thick manila folder from under my arm and slammed it onto the mahogany coffee table. "This," I announced to the dead silent room, "is a medical evaluation from Dr. Evans, dated 3 days ago. It proves Garrett is completely competent and sharp as a tack." A heavy murmur rippled through the country club crowd. The pastor lowered his glass slowly, and I continued dropping the stack of bank statements directly over Paige's fraudulent paperwork, are the receipts showing $45,000 illegally structured out of his accounts and funneled directly to Cole's business over the last 2 months. The human reaction was instant and absolutely devastating. The wealthy socialites physically recoiled from Whitney, stepping back as if she carried a disease. Paige, realizing she was caught in a massive criminal conspiracy, shoved her pen into her bag and practically sprinted for the front door. Cole shrank against the wall, his face the color of spoiled milk, looking frantically for an exit. Whitney panicked. Sweat beaded heavily on her forehead. She pointed a shaking finger at me, screaming that I was a liar, that I was trying to steal the inheritance, that Garrett did not even know what year it was. Then came the ultimate finisher. Garrett stood up. He did not shake. He did not stumble. He stood tall, adjusted his tailored blazer, and looked down at his daughter with utter disgust. I know exactly what year it is. Whitney. His voice boomed, rich and commanding, and I know exactly what you are. Get out of my house. Whitney's pristine social facade shattered into a million jagged pieces. The people she spent decades trying to impress were staring at her like she was a monster. She grabbed her purse and ran out the front door, leaving her reputation dead on the floor. That should have been the end of it. Whitney crying in the driveway, completely humiliated. Her master plan exposed to the world, but toxic entitlement knows absolutely no boundaries. Driven by pure spite, overwhelming greed, and the looming threat of Cole's loan sharks. Whitney made a fatal, irreversible mistake. In the dead of night, she took the blank quitclaim deed that Paige had illegally pre-stamped. She carefully forged Garrett's signature. On Monday morning, she logged into the county's electronic portal and e-filed the document, attempting to steal the house out from under him while hiding behind a screen. She thought she had bypassed the entire legal system, but e-filing a fraudulent deed creates a permanent digital paper trail. The moment the document hit the Register of Deeds, it was instantly rejected due to the pre-existing irrevocable trust. The system did not magically summon police to her house. Instead, I received the automated title monitoring alert on my phone. I downloaded the official rejection notice, printed the forged document, and drove straight to the district attorney's Elder Financial Abuse Task Force. I handed the lead investigator the forged deed, the bank statements, and the medical evaluation. The paper trail was flawless. The justice system is notoriously slow, but when it bites straight to the bone. It took the district attorney 3 days to build an airtight, undeniable warrant. Whitney spent those 3 days thinking she had gotten away with a simple bureaucratic error, drinking wine and pretending everything was normal. On Thursday afternoon, uniformed police walked right into the dining room of her exclusive country club. They did not wait for her to finish her expensive salad. They handcuffed her in front of the entire luncheon, marching her out past the very women she had tried to impress at the birthday party. By sunset, Cole had already flipped on her to save himself, signing a full confession in exchange for a lighter sentence. State investigators raided Paige's strip mall office, confiscating her notary stamp and journal in front of a lobby full of clients, permanently ending her career. Every loose end was tied. The money was flagged. The house was safe. And the predators were in cages. The aftermath was not just a victory. It was an absolute reckoning for everyone involved. The judge did not show an ounce of leniency for a woman who tried to rob her own father and manipulate the legal system. Whitney was sentenced to 6 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole only after serving 4 long years behind bars. The court ordered full restitution of the $45,000 forcing the total liquidation of Cole's remaining assets and properties. Cole received 3 years of probation and a permanent felony record, rendering him completely unemployable in the real estate industry ever again. In our community, the fallout was absolute. The church banned them entirely. The country club formally revoked their membership. Whitney lost everything she valued in this world: her freedom, her money, and her meticulously crafted image. 4 months later, the hollow echo finally arrived. I was sitting in my quiet living room when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from the state correctional facility. It was Whitney. Her voice was incredibly thin, completely stripped of its old commanding power. She tried to play the ultimate victim one last time. She wept into the receiver, saying she was still my mother, that she did it because she was desperate. That blood is thicker than water. She begged me to put money on her prison commissary account so she could buy decent soap. The old me would have folded immediately. The old me would have felt a crippling wave of guilt and rushed to fix her mess, sacrificing my own peace to quiet her tears. I listened to the entire message. I did not feel angry. I did not feel sad. I felt absolutely nothing. I hit delete, blocked the facility's number, and went back to drinking my warm coffee. It was the most profound, beautiful silence of my entire life. My life now is beautifully calm and remarkably steady. I spend my weekends with Garrett, tending to his vibrant tomato garden and listening to his stories. I surround myself with chosen family, friends and colleagues who respect my boundaries, value my voice, and never ask me to shrink myself for their comfort. I finally understand what peace actually feels like. It is not just the absence of shouting. It is the complete absence of fear. If you are listening to this and you are shrinking yourself right now to survive a toxic family member, I need you to hear me clearly. I want to share the 3 rules that saved my life and protected my grandfather's legacy from being destroyed by greed. Rule number 1, the peacekeeper's trap is a complete lie. Keeping the peace in a toxic family does not create harmony. It only subsidizes the abuser's war. You cannot heal in the exact same environment that broke you. Walking away is not a betrayal. It is an act of sheer survival. When you stop fighting their battles, you finally have the energy to build your own life. Rule number 2, facts always overrule feelings. When you are dealing with a manipulative personality, never argue with emotion. They will twist your tears and constantly weaponize your anger to make you look like the crazy one. Build an impenetrable wall of documentation. Take meticulous notes. Save every single receipt. And secure the paper trail. Narcissists can easily twist your words, but they cannot twist a time-stamped bank record or a signed medical evaluation. Rule number 3, the audience is the ultimate antidote. Toxic people rely entirely on isolation and secrecy to maintain their power. They need the dark to operate effectively. If they are willing to perform their abuse in the shadows, you must be willing to expose their reality in the blazing light of day. Let their own terrible actions destroy their reputation. Do not protect their image at the cost of your own sanity. Blood does not make you family. Loyalty, respect, and safety make you family. You are completely allowed to walk away from people who consistently hurt you, even if you share a last name. Trust is earned through actions, not owed through genetics. So, I have to ask you a question. Who are you shrinking yourself for right now? Just to avoid a fight? And what is it truly costing you to stay small? If this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to cut ties to save yourself from toxic family members, drop a comment below and share your own survival story. Hit the subscribe button to join our amazing community here at Calm Drama Stories. You are not alone, and your voice truly matters. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are probably sitting there asking, why on earth did Danielle spend 34 years taking that kind of emotional abuse from her own mother? Or maybe, why didn't Garrett just lock his bank accounts the exact second he noticed the missing money? Let us talk about why incredibly smart people stay stuck in deeply toxic family dynamics. In psychology, there is something called the slot machine effect, formerly known as intermittent reinforcement. Whitney did not just abuse her family 24 hours a day. She probably threw out tiny crumbs of hope, a rare compliment, a fake smile at a country club dinner, a moment of warmth just enough to keep Danielle pulling the lever, hoping that this time she would finally hit the jackpot and get the mother she actually deserved. Danielle was not weak, and she was not stupid. She was simply addicted to those crumbs of hope, heavily conditioned to believe that shrinking herself was the mandatory price of family peace. But the moment that spell broke, Danielle and Garrett executed an absolute masterclass in financial self-defense. Let us break down the street smart moves they used to dismantle this scheme. First, they deployed the audit strategy. Scammers, especially family members like Whitney and Cole, rely entirely on the dark. They hate details, and they hate paper trails. Garrett did not just yell at his daughter when he suspected theft. He quietly redirected his mail to a secure post office box and gathered the hard receipts showing exactly $45,000 stolen through illegal structuring. He let them think they were winning while he quietly audited the reality. Second, they focused entirely on building the case instead of arguing. Danielle knew that fighting a narcissist with emotion is a completely losing game. They will outcry you and outgaslight you every single time. Instead, she got a time-stamped cognitive evaluation. She built a wall of verifiable, undeniable paper that no amount of fake tears could ever penetrate. Finally, they executed the buyout. While there was no literal cash settlement handed to Whitney, Garrett and Danielle invested heavily in their own permanent freedom by hiring a ruthless estate attorney and legally locking that $850,000 home into an irrevocable trust. They paid the upfront cost of legal fees and public discomfort to completely buy back their peace of mind. They closed the door forever. Here is the ultimate verdict: your family members are not entitled to your life savings. And they certainly are not entitled to your sanity. Generational trauma often disguises itself as family loyalty. Do not let anyone use your shared last name as a license to steal your future. You have every right to audit your relationships, cut off the toxic funding, and walk away. Has anyone ever tried to use family guilt to manipulate your finances or cross your boundaries? I want to hear exactly how you handled it. Drop your story in the comments below. And do not forget to subscribe to Calm Drama Stories for more real-world strategies to protect your peace, your mind, and your wallet. Stay sharp and take care of yourselves.